back to my channel. So I'm not sure if you are all aware, but this past week has been a wild ride for cosplay drama. We are, at our hearts, very passionate people, and it can definitely lead to some conflict among the community on occasion. This particular drama was specifically around the MomoCon contest that I competed in a few weeks ago, and a video that one of the judges put out. I do not want to rehash this drama, nor do I want to go into the details of what happened in the video. It has been circling around the internet like crazy. It's been all over threads, and I know that this creator has issued an apology statement and is changing the way that they do things in the future, so I feel like it is resolved. However, it did bring up 3 interesting topics that I feel like we should talk about. I know that there are a fair amount of newer competitors in my audience who may have been exposed to this drama and is now nervous about competing or about these things. So I just want to lay out how I feel as both a judge and a competitor, and the general expectations within a cosplay contest, no matter where you go, how these things are typically done. Of course, there are nuances for everything and everyone's different, but I'm going to give you my perspective, particularly from a judge's standpoint. 3 things that I want to talk about specifically. The first one is going to be the absolute most important thing, and that is consent in cosplay. I also want to talk about the importance of makeup in cosplay and how it can be judged, and I also want to talk about storytelling in cosplay. Now, I know if you are in the community, you've probably heard a million opinions about this, so if you are not interested in hearing about this, I totally understand. My channel is packed with a bunch of other content you could go check out if you want. If you want to watch my vlog about competing in MomoCon, that will be linked in the comments below or somewhere up here. Or if you just want like a tutorial or something like that, I also have a new one I put out last week about how I did the embroidery for my Sakizo panel. No worries if you don't want to head down this road with me, but I do think it is an important thing for us to talk about. So let's talk about consent in cosplay, specifically consent to be recorded or appear in photographs. The #1 rule of the cosplay community that has been pushed for a very long time now, and it took us a really long time to get here, is cosplay is not consent. Typically, if you go to a convention, you're going to see that on a poster somewhere. It's going to be on a website. You will see it. Cosplay is not consent. Meaning, just because we are dressed up in costume does not give you permission to take a photo of us or take a video of us. It doesn't give you permission to touch us or harass us or do anything creepy or anything like that. We are in costume because we enjoy the craft. We are not here for your entertainment. That's just how it is. However, most of us are very theatrical people, and we absolutely love getting our photographs taken. We love doing little skits and stuff and having fun in costume. So all that we are asking is, ask us first. If you want a photo, ask us. We can pose in the most flattering way for us in our costume. If you want to do a fun little skit, then ask us, and more than likely we're willing to do it. Of course, don't go down the creepy route, like doesn't need to be said, I think. But all in all, just ask first. Just because we're dressed up doesn't give you permission. So let me take this back to MomoCon a few weeks ago. So the issue started when it came out that some of the people who had been featured in one of the judges' videos did not consent to being in the video, specifically in prejudging. So this judge was recording content for their YouTube video in the prejudging room. So for those of you who don't compete, prejudging is a small moment of time that a competitive cosplayer gets, where before a contest, we get to go into a small room with 3 to 5 other judges, and they get to look at our costume up close. They will flip scenes, all with consent, of course. They always ask if they can flip a seam or if they can touch your costume, and they're looking very closely to judge the craftsmanship of that costume because it's a craftsmanship contest. So they want to award people who did the best craftsmanship. So they're going to look at everything that they can. So it is a very private moment where you may show things that you would not show outside of the judging room. Now, you're not taking your costume off or doing anything like that. They'll never ask you to do that. But there may be things that you want to keep just between you and the judges, and you don't want it to be filmed and put into a YouTube video. So it has come out that some of these people were not asked for consent, or at least they don't remember giving consent, which is a very interesting conversation, and that is why I wanted to talk about it. Consent is very specific and it can be withdrawn at any time. There are rules around what qualifies as consent. Now, I don't know all of the specifics legally, but essentially you really do need to be of sound mind. You need to understand the situation and ramifications of your decision to consent, and you need to be given time to consider it. And you also often, it would be best for you to have something in writing that you could sit down and read and really understand how the footage is going to be used. That would be a perfect scenario. You can also give consent verbally. It doesn't have to be written, but essentially it's something that should happen that gives the person you're asking time to think about what is happening. Now, with my experience with the competition, as soon as I walked into the prejudging room, I was immediately asked if I am okay being recorded. And I immediately said yes, and I moved on, and I didn't even think about it. That is consent. However, was I given time to think about how this was going to be used, or who was recording it, or where it would wind up? No. Personally, I didn't care. I was actually excited about being in this person's video, but that's me. Not everyone is going to feel that way, and that is perfectly okay. The problem is this is a high pressure situation. This is a moment where you are thinking about all the things, all the thousands of things that you are trying to fit into your 3 minutes. You want to make sure that the judges notice. You want to make sure that you remember to point out all the special little details that you did, and you want to answer whatever questions they have. The idea of where this footage could wind up may never cross your mind. You may not even think about it. So the idea of consent at this moment feels a little shaky, because can you really give consent when you don't really understand what you are consenting for, because you're not giving the time to consider it? Also, there is a power imbalance here. We have a judge asking a contestant, and it could feel to the contestant that if they say no, then perhaps that could impact their scoring, or subconsciously it could impact them. So they may automatically say yes, even though they don't want to be in the video. So there's a lot of questions around, can consent be given in this situation? And if so, like, if you change your mind, how do you go about withdrawing that consent? How do you contact the person to ask them to remove you from the video? It's all very, very confusing, and it's too much. It is too much. We go to the prejudging room and we should be focusing on prejudging. I really feel like it brings us to the topic of consent, and I want to make sure that everyone, especially those who are just getting into competing, understands that you always are able to say no. If you don't want to judge touch a certain part of your costume, if you don't want to judge to come too terribly close, if you don't want to judge to record you if they ask, say no. I know I personally, when I judge, I like to take photos for reference later. It's a supplement to your build book. I will take photos of things that piqued my interest that I want to remember later. This also really helps me in a feedback panel that's typically the following day, so I can remind myself of the costume and my thoughts on the costume. It's just faster than writing notes and more accurate than writing notes. So I take photos, but I do always ask, are you okay with me taking photos? You as the competitor are always allowed to say no, and I will never hold that against you, and no judge worth anything will hold it against you either. We totally understand. We do delete those photos after the feedback panel, by the way, like they're just gone off the phone, gone forever. So you never have to worry about them being used in content. But if you're not comfortable with that, you are not comfortable with that, and that is perfectly okay, and we're fine with it. It should never be held against you. So I really hope that has added some comfort to those who are feeling stressed about potentially being in a situation they don't want to be in a prejudging room in such an intimate setting. And I hope this helps with some understanding about how consent can work within a prejudging contest scenario. And if you ever agree to do something, if you ever in the middle of prejudging agree to have your photo taken and then you suddenly just think, no, I don't want that, always speak up and say, actually, I changed my mind. I'd rather you not take photos. And of course, this applies to any situation. If you agree to do a photo or a video for someone at the con and you're like, actually, no, I'd rather not, say that, and they should be perfectly okay with it. There should never be a problem with withdrawing consent. It can be withdrawn at any time. And forever and always remember, cosplay is not consent. Okay, on to something a little more light than this. Let's talk about the storytelling drama that came out of this video as well. The discourse around this topic revolves around a comment that was made in the video, essentially saying that storytelling has no place in a craftsmanship contest, specifically a craftsmanship contest. That's my paraphrase, it's not exactly how it was said, but that's essentially the idea. The conversation that blew up around this comment from other cosplayers in the community wholeheartedly disagreed, saying that storytelling is an essential part of cosplay and should be a large part of the scoring in a craftsmanship contest. I think there's a disconnect between what story and storytelling means between these two sources. The video didn't give us any details to explain exactly what they meant by this, but what I took it to mean was the cosplay in question had a better character background story than others. This was essentially my knee-jerk reaction, just like how I understood it to be from that video. So essentially what I'm thinking is someone came in and gave this beautiful, elaborate story as to why the character is the way that they are and did not speak about the craftsmanship of the build whatsoever. If this was the case, specifically in a craftsmanship contest, then this type of storytelling really isn't relevant. It doesn't really matter if your character is descended from elvish kings or a space pirate in a craftsmanship contest. What we're focused on is how did you make the costume? And a judge should be able to help steer a contestant who's getting into the weeds of the background of a character back to the build and ask questions about the techniques that they use to bring the build to life. So that was my idea. That was my thought. However, the people reacting to this video actually understood it to be something different. They thought the storytelling was actually referring to the craftsmanship of the build. Essentially, the build, the craftsmanship itself is the story. The fabric choices, the weathering, why you chose this type of metal over this type of metal, why you put this design here, that all these pieces come together to tell a story about the build. And without knowing full context, we won't know what they meant. But I was really surprised to see this because I didn't think about it that way at all. Like, they're absolutely right. Like, I completely agree that the craftsmanship can be the story, but that's just not how I understood it to be from that video. So I wanted to give my thoughts on what storytelling in a craftsmanship contest should be and how I think a good way to handle a character background story that you feel is relevant to your build. So here's my thoughts on this. Specifically for craftsmanship contests, you only get maybe 3 minutes at most with the judges. Sometimes less. I've been in a contest where I only had 2 minutes with the judges. The point of the prejudging is to explain all of the awesome techniques that you did to bring this character to life. So yes, your fabric choices can be important and potentially why you chose them can be important, but what we really want to understand is what skills did you use? Did you pull them off well? Anything unique that you did? That sort of thing. That is why I say that a character's like background story isn't necessarily relevant because it's craftsmanship contest. We're focused on the craftsmanship of the build. This moment is for you, not the character. It's for you to shine. This is your moment. This is your work. We want to know about you more so than the background of the character. So you want to make sure you utilize those 3 minutes in a way that really makes your work shine. Now, I do understand that the background of a character can play into things. If you're doing something that is historically based, like 1100s, and you specifically chose fabrics that pertain to that period because you spent a lot of time researching, and then you learned how to dye fabric with woad because that would have been the dye that was available at the time, so you wanted everything to be historically accurate, tell me that. That is absolutely relevant to know. Yes, you have this medieval princess and you dyed everything with woad. Like, that is relevant and you could tie it into the background of the character. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, don't get lost in the fact that it's a medieval princess whose family was unalived or something and she was out to avenge them. Like, don't get focused on that unless you can tie it back into the build. So if you're a storyteller and you really like to give those details, tie in what you made. So yeah, she's off to get revenge, which is why she has this really cool battle scar that you hand sculpted as a prosthetic, and you did this really cool technique to weather your armor so that now it looks authentic to the time, you know, stuff like that. Really focus on the techniques that you use. Use a story to bring the techniques forward and show all the work and research that you did to put together a historically accurate character. And I will say that using a story to structure your elevator pitch can be helpful. If you have trouble remembering specifics, writing it into a little bit of a story can help. So I totally understand storytelling from that perspective as well, and go for it. I think that's fantastic. And the judges, a good judge should be able to help steer you towards more questions about your build if what you say is not answering something that they really want to know about it. And of course, you can always put details in your build book as well. Those 3 minutes are so crucial that you really want to make sure that what you're saying is what you want the judges to remember. They're very impactful, and that information is what sticks in a judge's brain. I do think storytelling has a place in prejudging. I just want to make sure that as a contestant, you don't get lost behind the character and that you really shine through, if that makes sense. And finally, let's talk about makeup. So the last little thing that came out of that video was around makeup, and it made it sound like it did not have a place in costume contest. I also think this was just something that spawned out of maybe a poorly phrased comment in the video. Of course, no additional details were really given, but makeup does have a place in craftsmanship contests. But here's my 2 cents on it for whatever it's worth. In a craftsmanship contest, we do not care if you look like the character. We don't care if you contour your face or do beauty makeup to make you look exactly like the character. Character like look-alike is not part of the scoring rubric, at least any rubric that I've ever seen. We're never going to judge the body in the costume. We're only going to judge the costume. We don't care if you look like the character. We only care about the costume and how it was made and how well you made it. So therefore, beauty makeup, which would be maybe more dramatic makeup than what you normally wear, or maybe some additional contour, that sort of thing, beauty makeup is never going to be judged in a craftsmanship contest. It is an enhancement, but we are looking at the costume. Makeup can get judged is along the lines of prosthetics and special effects makeup. So say you want to do a Mystique cosplay, which of course has a lot of custom prosthetics and body paint and that sort of thing. We will be looking at the prosthetics. We'll be judging whether or not they were sculpted well, they fit well against your body. We'll look at the edges. Do they lay down correctly? Do they blend out nicely? Does your makeup blend into the prosthetics beautifully without any sort of seams? That's when we're really going to be looking at makeup. What if you create a stage accurate genie from the Broadway musical Aladdin, and your body paint is cracking and rubbing off, but the costume itself is flawless, no prosthetic? The makeup shouldn't be judged in this situation, in my opinion. It is much like beauty makeup at that point. The costume itself is what is important here, at least in my opinion. But if you decide to, say, apply prosthetics to make yourself look like the cartoon version of Genie from Aladdin, and you've completely reshaped your face with prosthetics, I'm going to be looking at those prosthetics because they're part of the costume. Again, did you sculpt them well? Did they mold well? Are the edges laying down? And did you blend them out nicely? Is the makeup smooth? That is when I think makeup becomes part of the costume. Can makeup enhance and complete a costume? Of course, but again, a prosthetic is a piece of costume you've added to your face. We are definitely going to look at that. And I fully understand makeup artistry. I think it is a skill set on its own, and it should absolutely be considered, but it's very specific situations. And my main reason for wanting to talk about this is to stress that if you can't wear makeup or you choose not to wear makeup, you really don't have to worry about it. The way judging works is you can only gain points. based on what we see in prejudging. So you can't ever lose points. They'll only be judging you on what you present to us. I've never once looked at a person in prejudging and went, huh, I really wish that they would have done some sort of like special effects so that they looked exactly like Jeannie. I've never done that, and I never will do that, because you'll gain points based on what you made and what we can see in prejudging. So you don't have to worry if you don't want to wear makeup or you can't wear makeup, because it won't get judged. I am always impressed by every single person that walks through that door, and I'm very excited to find out, how did you make this crazy thing? My favorite thing is talking about how things are made. If you drop by my booth at all at any of the places I've guested at recently, you will know that, because I get very excited when anybody asks me about any sort of building process. And when I get one-on-one time with the competitors to really chat through what they did, oh, it's the best time. This is why I love judging contests so much. I enjoy it so much. I am always actively listening to what it is you are saying and not thinking about the things that you didn't do. I'm never gonna know that you didn't mean to do something or that something isn't there. But for those who do want to wear makeup, there is sort of a line of when it does get counted towards your score, and that is when you cross the line from like beauty makeup into special effects makeup. That's the best way that I can think about it. Now, there's no set guideline as to when that happens, because we all know there are people out there who make beautiful makeup looks and completely transform, but there's no like set line, and it really is up to the judge's discretion of when they consider it in prejudging. But I absolutely believe that makeup is a skill, it is an art, and it does have its place in a craftsmanship contest, but it's only one piece of the entire build. I hope that made sense. I feel like that was a little bit rambly. I know that not everyone's going to agree with me. I know there are people who think makeup shouldn't count ever. I know people who think makeup should always count, and that's fine. Until these contests become standardized, we just won't have a hard rule of when it counts and when it doesn't count. So it really is up to the judge's discretion, and the judges do deliberate and talk through these questions backstage as well. So it's not just one person thinking that yes, it should count or no, it shouldn't. It is the panel for a reason, so that we can talk these things out and weigh things out accordingly amongst several judges instead of one person making the decision. So yeah, I really hope that made sense. I love makeup, and I would love to be able to do the special effects makeup someday. And I don't ever want to discourage people who want to add makeup to their costume, and I never want to pressure anyone into thinking you have to wear makeup to compete and win in a cosplay contest. You absolutely do not. I hope this made sense to you and to anyone who is having any sort of doubt or questions about competing, and that this is just one more voice in the community that is helping guide you towards your future in craftsmanship contests. I was really worried that people would feel put off by what happened. I read several people saying that they don't know that they want to compete in contests anymore. Please don't back out. These things sometimes happen, and they do open up a really good conversation so that we can help come together as community to start standardizing processes and procedures for this sort of thing. Before we had this community and this open discussion, there were no rules, essentially. There were no rules. It was completely Wild West, and we are becoming closer every year to being a full, stabilized system of competitions. It's just going to take time, and discussions need to happen to get there. So please don't feel scared off by the discourse that has happened, because I promise you, if you love to build cosplays, cosplay contests can be one of the best parts of a con. And going into prejudging is a really great time to meet with master level cosplayers and chat with them about what you made. It is such a fun time. And the more you do it, the less scary it becomes. And I hope my thoughts and advice have added some perspective from a longtime contestant and cosplay judge. So most importantly though, the message I want to be taken away from this video is that prejudging is your moment to shine. Don't forget it's about you. Let us know how awesome you are, and don't worry if you don't want to wear makeup. It's fine, I promise. And if you are a special effects artist, don't worry, the judges absolutely see it. And forever and always, Cosplay is not consent. So as always, if you like this video, make sure to hit the like button. Please let me know your thoughts on these topics below. I'd love to keep the conversation going. I'd love to hear your opinions on the 3 things that I talked about today. I'd also love to know if you agree or disagree, points that I made, and let's just keep the chat going, because I think it's incredibly important that we have open discussions about things like this. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more content from me, and I will see you in my next video.